If you don't understand India and China, you don't understand motorcycles in 2026. Let me explain. In the US, motorcycle riders purchase about 500,000 bikes per year. We've got chromed out bagger daddies dropping 40 grand on road glides, crazy super sports squids financing S1000RRs on 24% loans, and of course, random YouTubers buying tasty green Vespas. Looking around at our packed dealerships and sprawling highways, it feels like the market is bumping. Manufacturers are constantly sending us press bikes, running massive ad campaigns, and vying for our attention. It makes us feel pretty important, and we are, right? We're number one, right? Come on. No, not even a little bit. That used to be the case back in the mid-20th century, but that was a really long time ago. We are rapidly entering a brave new multipolar world, one where the center of economic and manufacturing power is drifting east, especially in the world of motorcycling. You want to know a crazy fact? India sells more two-wheeled motor vehicles in about 10 days than we sell all year here in the United States. Really think about that for a second. In the time that it takes for you to order a bike part, wait for shipping, and then install it on Saturday, Indian dealerships have moved more units than every Harley, Honda, Yamaha, and Cowie dealer in America combined in a year. And China's domestic market pumps out nearly identical numbers. So perhaps it's time for American riders to brush up on our Mandarin.
我正在经历美国版百年国耻，最近的塔可贝尔在哪儿？
It's a meme and honestly a bit of an unfair trope, but from what I've seen, American riders are completely clueless about what's really going on in the motorcycle industry when it comes to India and China. I started thinking about this a little while ago when I was riding the Norton Atlas out in Iceland. Norton, as you may know, is the famed British brand bought out by the Indian motorcycle conglomerate TVS, a company that most American riders have probably never heard of. When I was reviewing that bike, I naturally put myself in the mindset of a North American customer who might be interested in dropping their hard-earned cash on it. When reviewing or evaluating a bike, I think it's always best to think of the target customer, and since I live in North America, that's usually the easiest perspective for me. And I have to admit, rather sheepishly, that it never once occurred to me that during this initial ride, that this bike was actually designed to be sold in India. It was engineered to cater to a specific affluent clientele in that part of the world. I mean, think about it, a well-to-do office worker in Mumbai, for example. Someone who wants a handsome, premium everyday ride to signify that he's part of the country's booming, emerging middle class. The moment I thought about that and realized it, the entire machine started to make way more sense, even if my initial analysis of how it fits into the US market, I think still holds up. In many parts of the world, what we arrogantly label a 400cc beginner bike is actually an aspirational dream bike. It's why huge brands like Triumph and Aprilia are pivoting their strategies. We thought it was awesome that Triumph expanded their entry-level offerings in our market with the Speed 400 and the Scrambler 400X, but the reality is that Triumph isn't really staying up late at night stressing over US sales figures. They wanted to sell hundreds of thousands of bikes in India and across Southeast Asia. And alongside their manufacturing partner Bajaj, they've done that pretty damn well. Aprilia did the same thing with the RS457, building a parallel twin sport bike in Baramati, India, aimed directly at the massive Asian market, while sending a tiny fraction of that production run over to us here in the States. Over in China, CF Moto is flexing its engineering muscles by building China-specific offerings for their domestic market first. Bikes like the 500SR Voom, a pretty wild retro-styled bike with a 500cc inline 4, hard to imagine here in the States, or that elusive 750 platform that may or may not ever touch American soil. Brands like Kove and QJ Motor have proven that Chinese engineering has the prowess to build high-revving engines and race-winning chassis too. Special shout out to ZX Moto as well. The expanding partnerships between Chinese and Indian manufacturing giants and classic Western brands prove that this industrial entanglement has no signs of unraveling. Decades ago, Western corporations became hopelessly addicted to the lower labor costs provided by globalization. At the same time, they realized that they could tap into massive overseas populations that were actively being lifted out of poverty and hunting for a slice of the good life. Designed in California, made in China. Sound familiar? Now in the motorcycle world, it's designed in the United Kingdom, made in India. This is a seismic, irreversible shift in motorcycling that's going to define the future of riding for the next 50 years. I know we tend to think of everything in quarters or monthly here in America, but these other countries, they're thinking in decades. And I'll be brutally frank here, I think American riders are living under a collective mass delusion that we still occupy the global stage the same way we did in the 70s, and that couldn't be further from the truth. The United States, as it stands today in the world of motorcycling, is an ultra-low volume niche lifestyle market. India and China are the primary markets that global brands are designing for, with Europe as a strong secondary consideration, and then Latin America after that, and then North Americans are just simply getting whatever scraps are left over. We're already seeing this play out in our own showrooms in real time. Do you think Kawasaki designed the Ninja 500 specifically to cater to American highways? No. It was built around European A2 licensing restrictions and Asian tax brackets. Do you think the board of directors at Triumph was hyper-focused on Americans when they spent millions developing the Speed 400 platform? I highly doubt it. If anything, they probably looked at the US projections and said, sure, go ahead and we'll sell a couple thousand units in the States, ship a crate or two over there. And consider what is perhaps the most sacrilegious partnership to the average American cruiser guy's senses. Harley-Davidson partnering with Hero to build smaller single-cylinder entry-level bikes like the X440 for the Indian market. The company that built its entire identity around massive air-cooled V-twins and American steel had to go to India's largest bike manufacturer just to build a bike that they could sell in real volume. Being a group ride leader is a big responsibility, and it's why on most rides that heavy burden is left to the elder squid in the group. You know the one, the silver ponytail, Honda VFR from like 2006 that's somehow still running like a top, and a hydration system consisting of drinking one single Dr. Pepper at the gas station stop. Wow. But you wanna know a secret? That guy is probably planning the whole route with Kalimoto. He's got enough things to worry about with this ragtag group of riders. It's like herding cats a lot of times. So he's gonna let Kalimoto do the heavy lifting and come up with a route. Kalimoto is a route planning app built specifically for motorcyclists. It helps you find the best twisty roads, the most scenic routes, and stitch them all together. You can tell it how long you want the ride to be, what kind of route you're looking for, and you can even download it for offline use. Because, let's be honest, that Silver Fox has zero interest in being online. We're kind of riding motorcycles to get off the grid, don't you know? So here's what I got for you today. Hit the link in the description, download the app, and use one of the codes on the website to get either a 30-day free trial or 10% off your first year. Consider that my little gift from me to you. Thanks to Kalimoto for the support. Now let's get back into it. I'd like to take you back to the 70s and 80s for a quick history lesson, and I promise it's directly relevant to what we're talking about right now. To the old timers watching this video, please leave a comment down below if you remember and lived through this era, because I really wish that I had been around to experience it. It might be hard to imagine today, but there was a time when Americans completely dominated Grand Prix racing on the world stage. We rocked up to Europe in the late 70s and 80s with legendary racers like Freddie Spencer, Eddie Lawson, Wayne Rainey, Kevin Schwantz, and of course, King Kenny Roberts, and we just kicked everyone's ass. Not only were we winning championships on the track, but we were actively setting the tone for global motorcycle culture. Kenny Roberts used his immense influence and superstar status to challenge the racing establishment. He advocated for critical safety advancements and better track conditions and fairer rider payouts. During that era, the Japanese motorcycle invasion was targeted directly at the American consumer. That was their North Star. The Big Four built iconic machines like the Honda CB750 and the Kawasaki Z1 specifically to satisfy that American obsession with wide open roads, high displacement, and raw speed. Honda even built a massive manufacturing plant in Marysville, Ohio, assembling bikes like the Goldwing right here on American soil so that they could get closer to the American rider and understand exactly what we wanted to buy. It reflected the broader mid-20th century attitude that Americans held. We believed that we were the absolute center of the universe, we acted like it, and we exported our culture to every corner of the globe. Now, I realize that is painting with a very, very broad brush, but this is a YouTube video. The medium isn't exactly conducive to deep geopolitical nuance, and frankly, the more multi-syllabic academic jargon I throw into this history section, the faster I'm going to lose your attention. So let's stay focused on the main point. What changed? What happened to that golden era of American motorcycling supremacy? Well, a lot of things happened all at once. As the late 20th century progressed, American society shifted its focus towards consumer safety and automotive convenience. Federal seatbelt mandates, tighter crash standards, strict emission acts, and the ever-expanding suburban sprawl made cars the undisputed kings of American transportation. Public interest in grassroots motorsports just started to wane. Motorcycles were no longer viewed as legitimate, sensible daily transportation. Instead, they were rebranded by the media and the public as dangerous, irresponsible toys for bad boys. All the good the Honda Nice campaigns did, huh? Our domestic motorcycle industry began to dry up. Begging for tariffs and protectionism from the government didn't end up saving them anyways, and that decline culminated in the 2008 financial recession, a devastating crash that the American motorcycle industry really never recovered from. So then as we rolled into the 2010s and 2020s, the economic reality became obvious. The average American rider was getting poorer in real terms. And sure, you can point to GDP per capita metrics and try to make a textbook economic argument that the average American is getting wealthier every year, but let me ask you a simple question. Does it make sense that if a billionaire walks into a crowded dive bar, suddenly everyone in there becomes a millionaire on average? Of course not. America has rapidly transformed into a nation of haves and have-nots. Unless something radical changes, our middle class will continue sliding down the stairs of economic inequality, struggling to climb back up. This dynamic really interests me because I come from a country with massive structural inequality. I'm originally from Brazil. Oi, galera, tudo bem? And over the last decade, I've noticed that the United States is starting to look more and more like a developing nation, like Brazil or India. Maybe not quite as dramatic, but you're starting to see the same patterns. Small enclaves of extreme wealth surrounded by an expanding sea of financial struggle, deteriorating infrastructure, and subpar living standards. And if you think things are bad in the US, go to Brazil. It can get way, way, way worse. Why do you think our dealerships are stocked with BMW GSAs listed at over $30,000, catered to 55-year-old executives, sitting right next to budget commuters like a Yamaha WR125R? The middle ground of American motorcycling has been completely hollowed out. That's a story I've been telling on this channel for years now. Now that the US is no longer the center of gravity for global motorcycle engineering, we simply get the scraps that are produced for other markets. The charming, romantic world of mid-20th century American motorcycling, where a working-class rider could pack a duffel bag, shove a few $20 bills into their jacket pocket, and head across the continent on a basic motorcycle. Well, that's a dream that died a long time ago. I think of the whimsical stories of Peter Egan from Cycle World, and they honestly read more like fiction in 2026 rather than the chronicles of a dyed-in-the-wool American motorcyclist. Once the genie of global capitalism, outsourced manufacturing, and supply chain optimization was unleashed, it refused to go back in the bottle. And now we are marching toward a very strange new reality. Okay, I want to spend a moment discussing how rapidly this transformation materialized right under our noses, specifically when it comes to Chinese manufacturing. Back in 2022, our channel received an invitation to a press launch hosted by a brand called CF Moto to check out their new 300SS model. At the time, all I knew was that they were a Chinese company. I remember scoffing and derisively telling the team, why on earth would we waste our time going to that? Who cares about Chinese bikes? These are not legitimate products, and that is not our wheelhouse. But after doing some digging and research, I realized that they weren't just another fly-by-night distributor importing cheap bike-in-a-box things with Honda clone engines. They were a massive, fully integrated manufacturing force that was legit. I was still pretty skeptical, so I decided to not go myself, and I sent Josh and Whitney out to cover the event on my behalf. We edited the footage, put the review video up on the channel, and it completely blew up. The audience response was crazy. I think that video got like 100,000 views in 24 hours. I was genuinely shocked. Fast forward merely 4 years to today, and CF Moto has become a household name in the motorcycle community. Their products are widely recognized as legitimate, highly competitive alternatives to established Japanese and European bikes. The CF Moto 450 SS goes toe-to-toe with the Ninja 500, and their 3-cylinder 675 SS is taking direct shots at bikes like the Daytona 660 and the Yamaha R7. Their speed in capturing market share has been nothing short of astonishing. When I first started riding back in 2015, Chinese motorcycles were literally a joke. There were no legitimate highway-capable street bikes that you could buy from a Chinese brand with a real dealer network. And it was the exact same story with Indian motorcycles. For years, Royal Enfield was viewed in the West as a leaky, unreliable, archaic joke. If somebody bought a Bullet 500, it was purely because they wanted the authentic 1950s breakdown experience. But look at them now. Royal Enfield built modern engineering centers in the UK and India. They hired top-tier designers and launched smooth, ultra-reliable platforms like the 650 Twins and the liquid-cooled Himalayan 450. And today, they occupy a massive, respected slice of the global market. Take a look at a Royal Enfield facility. Go ahead, tell me that looks like a developing country put that together. It looks modern. It looks thoroughly nice. Riders who don't actively keep their finger on the pulse like we do here at Yami Noob can be forgiven for having outdated opinions. Their view of the motorcycle world is calcified, frozen in a late 20th century framework where America, Japan, and Western Europe dictate everything, and things from China and India are just junk. Meanwhile, CF Moto is pouring serious money into professional road racing. They aren't just sponsoring teams for marketing fluff, they're building a real talent pipeline in Moto3 and Moto2 through their partnership with the Aspar team, with strong indications that a full-fledged entry into MotoGP is right around the corner. Tell you what, if you told me back in 2015 that there'd be a Chinese bike in MotoGP, I would have laughed you out of the room, but that is very close to reality. When you consider their deep industrial ties with KTM, who already run a MotoGP program, it seems like a foregone conclusion. Chinese and Indian brands are actively forcing traditional Japanese and European manufacturers to step up their game, both on the racetrack and on the showroom floor. All of this brings us to another massive shift that traditional motorcyclists consistently refuse to acknowledge: the explosive rise of the e-bike and micromobility market. Now, it's no secret that China has completely lapped the rest of the globe when it comes to electric vehicle manufacturing, battery chemistry, rare earth refining, and supply chain dominance. They've got it all pretty much figured out. They manufacture the vast majority of the world's batteries, and they have integrated them into their domestic infrastructure on a truly staggering scale. Now, I know how most real motorcyclists feel about electric bikes because I feel that way about them, frankly. We couldn't care less about heavy, quiet, soul-sucking electric street motorcycles. They're overpriced, they have terrible range at highway speeds, and most importantly, they don't make those sweet brap sounds that trigger the serotonin release in our brains. While Western riders collectively complain about high bike prices and declining youth interest, the low-cost Chinese e-bike market stepped in and just solved that problem in a really spectacular way. Maybe you live in a suburban neighborhood like I do that's been completely taken over by packs of teenagers riding lightweight electric dirt bikes, pulling massive wheelies down the street and hopping curbs. To be honest, I prefer seeing kids doing that than looking at iPads all day, but that's a topic for a different video. But have you actually looked at the price tags and specs on these machines? They're really cheap, they're fast, they're lightweight, and they're super fun. They don't require dealer freight charges, license plate registrations, or expensive insurance policies in most states. And they require basically zero mechanical maintenance. You just twist and go. It is a completely fresh, highly accessible spin on two-wheeled freedom, and hundreds of companies are fighting for a piece of that pie. Suron, who's a Chinese company, was the pioneer that unlocked that market, but look at how American companies reacted. Zero Motorcycles, an American electric motorcycle pioneer that spent over 15 years trying to sell heavy, expensive electric street bikes to skeptical traditionalists such as myself, recently had to pivot and launch their own lightweight XE and XB models. They literally had to copy the Chinese lightweight dirt bike formula just to stay relevant and capture a slice of the youth market. To me, that pretty much perfectly highlights the utter lack of vision in the Western motorcycle industry. We had an American company sitting on electric powertrain technology for over a decade, but it took a Chinese upstart to realize that young people just wanted light, cheap, playful machines to tear around their neighborhoods. Talk about setting the tone for the future, right? The world we live in is changing at a super fast pace. A nimble e-bike startup can spin up a new product line using modest capital and immediately test it on a global scale. Chinese OEMs are expanding their lineups at a rate that leaves traditional brands scrambling to keep up. I mean, I feel like there's a new CF Moto model every 6 months. They're designing bikes for their massive domestic markets and shipping a few thousand over to the US just to kind of pad their bottom lines a little bit. Indian manufacturing titans are now powering iconic Western brands. If you still think bikes built in India or China are inherently low-quality junk, you clearly haven't seen a modern automated factory in these countries. Japan started this global manufacturing shift decades ago, and they moved major production lines to Thailand, which at the time was kind of a controversial move. Even premium European brands followed. The Ducati Scrambler, an iconic symbol of Italian lifestyle and branding, is built in Rayong, Thailand. Designed in Bologna, assembled in Rayong. The taglines just write themselves. Motorcycle design, engineering, supply chains, and urban riding culture are now dictated by Eastern demand. American riders are no longer behind the handlebars controlling what is happening. We're merely just along for the ride. Like a sullen, sad sack sitting inside the sidecar of a Ural hurtling towards a cliff. What do you think about this? Are American riders living in a complete fantasy world regarding our place in the motorcycle industry? Are we heading towards a future dominated by Indian manufacturing and Chinese technology, whether we like it or not? Sound off in the comments down below, although I have a feeling a lot of you already typed up very angry essays by now, but hopefully you enjoyed this deeper dive into the state of the industry. Personally, I love taking a break from tier lists, ranking videos, and beginner bike roundups to flex my brain cells a little bit more. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.